Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I am here with.
Hey everyone, I'm Al Spader. Happy to be here.
And Al Spader was one of the writers behind Star Trek Adventures Player's Guide. Today, we're going to do an overview about this book. Some time ago, we did a review of the Game Master's Guide, and it slipped my mind. Someone commented, say, "Hey, what happened to the Player's Guide review you talked about before?" Like, oh man, you know. So, uh, so yeah, I just want to talk about this book. But before we delve into this, let's talk a little bit about Star Trek Adventures, how they do their rule book. I think it's very different from a lot of what a lot of other systems do. Because usually most systems you have to get the player's guide. But this one, what Star Trek Adventures does, so there's the core rule book, there's the Klingon core rule book, there's the player's guide, that's here, and then there's also the rules digest. So I've never seen a system that tries to grab different types of players, from new to old to veterans to newbies, in such a very effective ways. Like it's really intriguing.
Yeah, the core rule books that are out there, including the Rules Digest, they kind of have everything that a GM or player needs to play the game wrapped up inside of them. In fact, one of the things that the Star Trek Adventures line does is we try to provide stuff for GMs and players alike in every single book so that there's something for everyone in each of the books. And when we decided to do the GM's guide and the player's guide, we were looking to kind of maybe bring new players into the game because it's a small book with a really cool cover, and bring new players into the Star Trek universe in general, and then to give some tips and tricks on how to be a great player while playing Star Trek Adventures.
In my opinion, I think the core rulebook is perfect for people that have role played before, people that know Star Trek already. The Rules Digest is perfect for those that just want the rules. They know about Star Trek already. They want to read it again. They just want the rules, which is a great way to pass it around to other players that just want to know the rules specifically as well. And of course, the Klingon core rulebook, if you love all Klingons. What I really like about the Star Trek Adventures Player's Guide is that it's the first book coming out from the system that's good for new players and for new people that are sort of been exposed to Star Trek recently. It's a good way to know more about it. We just spoke about this before, but the first two sections of the Star Trek Adventures Guide, which is about looks like about 50 or so pages. Introduction, Star Trek Defined, and Star Trek Universe in Play.
Yeah, so this is kind of a section that's also mimicking the GM's guide a little bit, that talks about what is Star Trek, like what is Star Trek, the fundamental belief system behind Star Trek. What does it entail? It's science fiction, right? It's usually wrapped in real science. It's people. It's talking through your differences instead of fighting about them, things like that. And then it gets into like what is Star Trek Adventures, and how do we take what we see on the television shows and turn it into a role playing game. So those first two chapters, that's really what you're getting into, and then we spill into essentially like a timeline of what's happened in Star Trek throughout the years, because with all the different shows we've covered 800 years of timeline, and so we give a little bit about each like era and how things change.
Yeah, and I think it does a really good job also in giving people the idea of what to expect from this role playing game. I think, and I think I mentioned this to you before. I know when I mentioned Star Trek, the role playing game, Star Trek Adventures, the role playing game to other people, especially if they're new to the idea of Star Trek as a role playing game, there's a bit of hesitancy. Oh, is this gonna be fun? People don't seem to equate it to like Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or these other high action science fiction stories. Um, and I think this does a great job showing, no, there is a lot of exploration and discussion of ethics and morality, but there's a lot of danger and a lot of adventures that can be had in this system, in this game in general. Um, but you mentioned a little bit about the eras. Chapter 3, the Star Trek eras and playstyles. Very important chapter. I think sometimes uh, players and game masters, when they receive this, they're not sure where to start time wise. So Star Trek now, it's not just like a specific point in the future. It's what, maybe, well, if you count Discovery, that's like 1,000 years, I
Right,
think.
right. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, and the other cool thing about that, about the 1,000 years and the differences in, who our allies are and what the politics of the galaxy are and things like that. It's the types of stories that are being told within those eras too, right? So that's where we kind of drill into the second half of this chapter, where we talk about what does it mean to play a star-based campaign, right? We saw Deep Space Nine do this. And how is that different from a far from home game like Voyager, who's 70 million light years away or whatever, and trying to make their way back. So that's about how that chapter wraps up.
And what can you tell us about the Engage chapter? What are your thoughts about that?
So Engage in general was really our love song to players, and to share how do you engage in the content that your GM is presenting. That's really what we're talking about. So we start getting into different things like character roles and the types of stories that you want to tell. Are you doing just episodic television? Are you doing serialized stories where each episode builds upon it? Or are you doing like this one-time cinematic piece where everyone gets a little arc and whatnot? And then we get into some really detailed ways that like you as a player can start enhancing the story by like pulling on plot threads that your GM is laying down and things like that.
You know, I what I love about this book is that it doesn't give you right away the rules. A lot of this is more of a mental preparation, I guess you could say, like in a way of of how to run this game, how to play in this game, what can you expect when you're a part of this game. Character rules again doesn't give you the rules right away. It even goes even deeper to say, okay, you're in Star Trek. Who can you be? What can you be?
Right. And like if you are the XO on the ship, what are some things you could be doing while the story is unfolding? Like what are your jobs? What should you be doing on the ship like when you are not sitting at your station on the bridge? And then we even get into like there's things in here about session zeros, about how to be a co-writer with your GM, that like like how to do co-storytelling. Man, I forgot how awesome this book is. Um, a lot of the stuff that's in here like it can be applied to any game, not just Star Trek Adventures, and that's what I really love about it.
You know that's a really good point. If you want to do some sort of I won't say other properties, but like let's say another let's say a space station in space that different alien races and species come together and meet for different things. Um, you could use this as a rule system for that as well. You know,
Yeah.
for things outside of Star Trek. That's a I never thought of it that way. That's
So like
actually
I'm looking at page 132, chapter 4.4, supporting the game master, getting into the mood, playing along, um, asking for clarifications, pulling on plot threads, uh, like all of that stuff. Like it doesn't mention Star Trek Adventures specifically in there at all. These are suggested ways on how to be an awesome player regardless of the game that you're playing. So like that's a really cool thing that's inside this book as well. And when we were first designing the outline, one of the things that Jim challenged us with was, hey, I want as much of this as possible to be applicable to as many games as possible.
we started seeing the rules pop up in the character creation options and advanced operations. That's where you learn about the definitions of all the skills that you can acquire, the roles that you play, pretty much the what you need to pretty much make your character. And it's written in a way that it's very. At first, it's written in a way that seems to me very clear cut and simple.
Guidance. It's guidance and going deeper, right? There are new rules in here as well. For example, like there's rules in here for playing civilians. Whereas, the Star Trek Adventures core rulebook is all about playing Starfleet. The Klingon Empire core rulebook's all about playing Klingons. But this is how you could play a civilian in either of those type of campaigns, right? And we go into civilian roles like administrators, ambassadors, a bartender, bureaucrats, even rules in here for playing a child, which is kind of cool. So like if you want to play young Wesley, that the rules are now here in this book for you to be able to do that. So that part is awesome.
I never was anti-Wesley. I didn't know about that part of fandom till much later, But it could be because when I was watching Next Generation, I was actually his age at the
Yeah.
time, so
Yeah.
I related to him.
Yeah.
But going back to this, so yeah, overall, I think this is a really great book. I think it's a great book to give new people that are into role-playing games, new people that are into Star Trek, or both. I think if it was, let's say, Al, like, if you've never heard of Star Trek Adventures before, I think core rulebook might work better for you because I know you know all about role-playing games already. And I don't know if you're like me, but me, I like I don't know, I'm just old school role players. I kind of like the essential core rulebook as is. I just enjoy those type of books. But this book is great for. I could see this like donating this to the library nearby, and like kids. It's accessible enough that kids can understand this. It could be for those that have just watched some of the new Star Trek shows coming out. There's been a lot of new content the last 5 years, more than maybe the last 20 years before that. And they may just want to play in that setting. Don't want to play D&D. I think this book is great for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that like when you get to the last chapter in the book, it's really all about guidance and how to refine a character. Like we really like I think there's like some chapters for traits, talents, values, like, and it's not all about how to write them or how to create rules for them. It's more about how can you use them while you're telling a narrative story. What does it mean to challenge a value instead of embracing a value, and what potential plots can develop out of that after you've challenged a value, things like that. So yeah, just a really cool way to like drill down into who your character is.
Is there anything else about this book that you want to share before we wrap up?
Um, I think the really cool thing that I remember talking about was when we were talking about focuses. And, lots of people like to have these broad, generalized focuses. Let's say xenobiology, for example, is a very general term, general focus when it comes to Star Trek Adventures. But one of the things it recommends in here when you are getting to know who your character is and building your character is to think about maybe a couple of very specific focuses. And yeah, they're not going to come up in every single episode that you do, but if they do pop up, that makes your character feel really, really special. Like let's say playing the saxophone is a focus, right? That is very rarely going to show up. But the one time that it does, you're going to be so attached to that episode and you're going to love your character that much more because that one specific unique thing about them came into play and helped you, like, solve a mystery or, put some people at peace or whatever it was. So the focus section I think is really cool because it gets into that type of information.
And just so we're clear, this book is not this doesn't contain a bestiary, doesn't have a listing of all the Star Trek ships, nothing like that. This is made really so that if you're at your gaming table, and you have the core rule book and the other books there, and you have a player that maybe new or maybe familiar with it, but just they need to look up something. This is a great little book just to give them so that they're not like lost in the other sections of the core rule book and trying to find what they need to find. It's a perfect, straightforward book to find your answers.
Yeah, I 100% agree. If I was at a convention, I would have these with me at all times. This is the Game Master Guide for people that are swinging by the table and just say, hey, or flip through this, see what you think. Even if they don't know Star Trek at all, I think they could still get a lot out of these books.
So, viewers, do you have a copy of the Player's Guide for Star Trek Adventures? What did you like best about it? Do you like the core rulebooks better? Do you like the Rules Digest better? Let us know in the comments below. Al, thank you so much for taking part in this discussion. And to our viewers, stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.